Hello.
Hey Malik, we can't hear you. Your voice is completely breaking. Can you check your audio, please?
I'm checking it out. Give me a second. How about now?
Yes, okay.
Better?
Yeah, better. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that. So what I was trying to explain today and tomorrow, we're trying to keep it simple. We're trying to explain few basics concept about RAC, and along with the few concepts of RAC, we're going to explain about what is this RAC course is about, what are the course curriculum, course content, course duration, and followed by the WhatsApp group and Google Drive access. And today and tomorrow, we're going to continue with the fundamental concept about RAC architecture and RAC networking. And followed by the next weekend is the one actually we're going to start this RAC course. And this RAC course basically on a weekend batch. Since you all aware that weekdays we are going to cover database course and weekend will be covering this RAC course. Right. Like, the other batch in the database course, many students asked, can we continue with this RAC course? So if you are a new DBA or a junior DBA and you had to learn database fundamental concepts and all, first complete the database course and then jump to this RAC course. And if you're already expert and you're working as a DBA and you are aware of database concept at all, so you can directly enroll for this course along with the database course. You can parallelly learn both the courses. All right. So with that, I'll start with the introduction. So introduction about me, because I'm the one who is going to conduct this course. It is not the any other third party person or any other vendor is coming and teaching this course. So it's about me. Like, this is Mallikarjun here, having 15 years of experience in the IT industry. So I'm the one who is going to take this course end to end. This is my entire 15 years of experience where I dedicatedly work for only Oracle products. So meaning I started my career as a junior Oracle DBA, senior Oracle DBA, and went to team lead, infrastructure lead, and I learned almost all the Oracle products like Oracle Database, Oracle RAC, Golden Gate, Data Guard, and Oracle Exadata, Oracle Engineering System like Supercluster, Exalogic, and Oracle Cloud. So almost all, like, all the Oracle products, including Oracle EBI, Oracle PeopleSoft, Oracle Soha, and Oracle e-business suites. So my entire 15 years of journey is almost spent in all the Oracle products. So being that, I am very much interested or willing to be continue my journey in this Oracle world. So having said that, uh, did I limited my knowledge to this Oracle product? No, it's all left to your interest, how much you are enjoying learning. So you can go and explore the other products. So with that, I also learned some other products and also learned some other database technologies. So other products like Informatica, other products like the DevOps, like QuickBooks, Jenkins, Ansible, Terraform, other technologies also I adapted and I used those products, those technologies for my DBA life easy. For example, I learned some DevOps tools, and with the help of those DevOps scripting and all, I made my DBA day-to-day activities automation, and that's gonna help for my day-to-day activities in the DBA field. And along with that, again, as I said, I'm not limited my knowledge to only Oracle database. I also learned, expanded my knowledge into other technologies, like other database technologies. I also learned and worked as a MS SQL database admin, and also worked as a PostgreSQL admin, MongoDB admin, or DB2, IBM DB2 admin, and SAP HANA admin. So those are my other database skills. I also got a chance to work on those, and I'm working as Oracle DBA for those databases as well. Right. So though that is a short introduction about me. I'll be the one who is conducting this course and taking this course end to end. And again, if you have any questions, queries, you can feel free to unmute yourself here and ask any questions, or you can use this chat box. I'll be monitoring the charts. I can take this question whenever there's a question comes over here. Right. So again, we'll talk more about me and we'll have interaction about each one of you once we continue with our regular classes. But I'll keep it simple about me for now. And give me 1 second. Give me 1 second, guys. All right, so yeah, let's keep it simple about me. Again, as I said, once we continue with our regular classes, we'll talk more about each one of us and we'll have a discussion and we'll continue to have the career path and all. Because again, with this introduction about me, you might be having many questions, or on a regular basis, many of my students or my colleagues or my even my friend circle used to ask, with the cloud is booming, is there any risk on my DBA job? Is it safe to learn database courses? Is it safe to learn RAC courses? Is the cloud is going to reduce the number of jobs? So all those questions or queries will be there in everyone's mind, and that's going to be regular topic even in my friend circle. We'll be keep on discussing. We'll have more discussion on those kind of topics on a regular classes because yeah, in a simple word or simple definition, with the cloud technologies, there is no impact on the DBA jobs. The DBA job will be forever, and that will be there for until all these enterprise customer, big customer with the huge databases. Oracle is the only technology which will gonna survive those enterprise data or enterprise databases with a huge petabyte and terabyte database. Oracle is the only provider where the large database can be sustained over there, right? So, and then with the cloud, again, Oracle jobs or the DBA jobs, there won't be any risk. So with the cloud, again, it has its own pros and cons. With the cloud technologies, there are few jobs, not only Oracle field, in all the domain. people will lose the job because everything can be automated in the cloud. And at the same time, with the cloud, there are so many other job opportunities in all the field, including DBAs. They'll get a lot of more opportunities once you learn the cloud. Right. So that is a simple definition. Don't worry about the cloud technologies, cloud booming. There won't be any risk on the DBA job. And the other common or general questions people used to ask, is it, if I learn only Oracle technologies or Oracle database, am I going to survive? Can I learn the other database technologies? Right. It is all left to you. What is your energy and what is your interest in learning the other technologies, other database skills? If you learn, well and good, because once you become a database architect or the solution architect, you have to mandatorily need to know multiple database skills and multiple technologies so that you can easily offer a solution for any new project that comes and you want to build everything from the scratch. As a solution architect or as a database architect, you should be able to know multiple databases and you should be able to know multiple technologies and multiple DevOps skills, right? So that's the added advantages once you become more and more experienced, and then once you become a database lead or database architect or solution architect, and you should be knowing multiple database skills, right? And the other common questions in my friend circle or my all the students will ask, is it mandatory? Is it good to learn DevOps skills? Right, as I already explained, even myself, I learned other database skills. Even myself, I learned other DevOps skills. And again, by learning those technologies or those skills, you are not going to lose the DBA job or DBA interest. You have to use those technologies and those skills and then improve your day-to-day activities, automate your day-to-day activities by learning DevOps skills like Cookbook, Jenkins, Terraform, Ansible. With the help of these technologies, you can build your automation scripting and then you can use it for your day-to-day activities. You can make your day-to-day activities easy by learning those other technologies and other skills and other database products. All right, so that's about me and some of the interesting questions like regularly people used to ask. Like one is the cloud is going to reduce the DBA job? And is it good to learn other database skills? Is it best to learn the DevOps technologies? Right. So there are so many other questions also will be keep on coming. We'll discuss in our regular classes and we'll connect and then we'll take some career advice or career path. As a DBA, how should we focus and how should we grow with a 1 year experience, with a 5 year experience, with a 8 year experience, with a 10 year experience? What are our journey or what are our path? We'll all discuss in our regular classes. All right. So with that, I'll keep it simple. I will stop it over there about introduction and I'll move on to the next question. If no one has any questions or anything want to ask about me or want to know more about my career, I'm happy to say. Otherwise, I'll keep it a pause. I'll go to the next content. That's about the course curriculum because it's important to understand the course content before you all guys enroll for this course. You should know what is there in this course, what are we going to learn, and then who all can learn this course. That's the important factor. All right. If no questions, I'll go to the next topic, course curriculum. So course curriculum again, it's already prescribed in my blogspot, Malik034 blogspot. So go to training RAC, and in that RAC you can see the entire course curriculum. So this is the link. You can feel free to. I can ping in the chat here. You can feel free to go to this course curriculum. All right. So I'll brief about the course curriculum, what is included and what is not included. And if any further questions or queries, we can always take them up. Right. So this course will start with the introduction about the clusterware, the RAC architecture, the standalone database versus RAC database, how the configuration difference is, and what are the advantages, what are the pros and cons between the standalone and RAC, and my cluster-aware networking. So again, in simple definition, let's say many people, like, if you already as a working as a DBA, you know about basics of database. You might have heard this terminologies, uh, clusterware, a GI, grid infrastructure, ASM, or you might have heard ASM software, or you might have heard clusterware software. You might have heard GI home, grid infrastructure home, or ASM home. So there are many terminologies or many words people used to call it as a clusterware, grid infrastructure, ASM software, and a clusterware software, GI home, ASM home. These all are one and same. Many people will call based upon the familiarity. Like, many people will say ASM home, many people will say grid home, many people will say uh, clusterware home. So these are like one and same. No need to worry and no need to get confused on that. So we will talk this in our regular classes. But even myself, I used to say sometimes GI home, sometimes clusterware home, sometimes ASM home, sometimes cluster software, ASM software. So these are like refer to one and same. So again, that's all about how your practice and then what is your familiar word. You continue to use that. So, but in simple definition, so these all are one and same. Right. With that, so we will basically start with the introduction about clusterware or the grid infrastructure or the ASM, the software, and then the networking and fundamental architecture. What's the difference between the standalone and RAC? And followed by, we'll deep dive into clusterware architecture. What are the cluster resource, local resource, and what is OCR, voting disk, what are the cluster startup sequence, what are the daemon, what are the services in my clusterware. Once we understand the basic concepts or basic architecture of my RAC architecture or clusterware architecture or the grid infrastructure architecture, then we'll start with the installation of my Linux networking and start with the installation of my two-node RAC database, RAC cluster, and RAC database, and creation of multiple disk groups, and creation of your RAC Oracle home and RAC database. So all this chapter number 1 to 8 is all about your the fundamentals, is all about the RAC architecture, RAC networking. So understanding of RAC architecture or cluster architecture, the making our fundamental technology strong, it's very, very important. And with that, we're gonna crack any of the complex situation or the complex scenario when we work as a RAC expert. So first we need to make our fundamental architecture very strong. So because of that, we will spend at least first 1 week on the installation, configuration, architecture, and cluster startup sequence and all the cluster daemons, cluster services, and the RAC or cluster networking. So make sure that get we all go in depth and understand each and every concept and make our fundamental strong. Then apart from that, whatever comes is all about how you can handle the situation. If any issue comes, it's all about how you're going to handle the situation. So you'll be confident and you'll be able to handle any kind of a issue or situation in a rack or a clusterware. It only comes when your fundamental is strong, when you know each and every concept of rack architecture, each and every daemon or services, where it will run and how it will run, which log to look at. If you understand all that concept fundamentals, then it's about managing the situation. It's about how to handle that particular situation. For example, I have a 4 node rack cluster. I'm working for one client. One of my node is got evicted. So node got evicted means node rebooted or cluster where service rebooted. So that is a critical complex situation comes. So if you know the basics, fundamental architecture, how RAC works, then for others, node eviction is a very complex situation. But if you know and you are strict to your core fundamental basics, then you can easily find out why the node is got evicted and what is your next action plan. So in order to answer to that, again, this is going to be one of the common interview questions for most of us. The node is evicted, what you're going to do. So we know, stick to the basics. We're going to cover all that in our regular classes, but stick to the basics. If they ask node is evicted, so what are our fundamental rules? The node eviction may be due to network issue or due to disk issue. There's a network heartbeat and disk heartbeat. So we're going to try to understand whether the node is evicted due to network issue or the disk issue. So who is going to evict the node? So if you know the basics of our fundamental of our RAC architecture, the node eviction is handled or supported by your CSSD, Cluster Synchronization Service Daemon. Fair enough. So we know that node eviction is caused or the responsible background process or responsible cluster daemon or the cluster resource is CSSD. Directly go to CSSD log and check it out. And CSSD log will tell you whether the node eviction is due to network heartbeat or the disk heartbeat, whether the network issue or the disk issue. And if it's a network issue, it's fair enough. So directly I can work with my network admin and then see what happened at that particular time. Is there any network packet drop? Is there any firewall got enabled? Is there any network interruption at that particular point? Right. And then if the node eviction happened due to disk issue, then fair enough. Again, I can work with my storage admin or my Linux admin to understand the disk performance. What happened at that particular time? Is there any disk IO latencies? Is there disk into bad condition? The disk went into bad state. So all those situation I can easily handle it. Look like the question or the situation complex, but as a DBA, what are my roles and responsibilities? I can easily able to crack. I can easily able to handle that situation only if I know my basic foundation is strong. So that's why we will spend the first week about understanding networking, understanding my RAC architecture, RAC fundamentals, and installation of my RAC cluster, RAC database, RAC Oracle Home software. All those things we're gonna spend in first 1 week about these 6 or 7 chapters, and followed by we'll start with the ASM architecture, ASM understanding, ASM concept, ASM disk group administration, mirroring, striping, your ASM disk group redundancies, external, high, normal, all those things. And then your ASM disk group administration, adding a disk, removing a disk, creating your ASM disk group with a different redundancies, and adding your data files, moving your data file, and all those things we're gonna talk about in chapter number 9 and 10 about ASM architecture and ASM administration and ASM disk group administration. So chapter number 11 is again your clusterware administration, CRCTL versus SRUCTL. When to use CRCTL, when to use SRUCTL, with which user I can run the CRCTL and SRUCTL, root user or the Oracle user, and what are the cluster daemons, cluster services, your all the cluster RAC database services, and your the associated logs for your cluster services or daemons. We'll try to go deep dive and understand in chapter number 11 about clusterware daemons, clusterware architecture and administration. And then again continue further with the clusterware administration with the OCR, routing disk, cluster resource, local resource, your scan IPs, VIPs, public IPs, and there are so many tools. We're going to explore more on those tools in chapter number 12 about cluster administration. Chapter number 13 is about RAC database administration. RAC database administration meaning your RAC database specific SP file, P file, password file, your redo log, your control file, data files, undo, and your all table spaces and all the users, your connectivity, how the connection is going to go through. All those things we're going to talk about the RAC administration. Again, the moment I say RAC administration, real application cluster, RAC database. So there are again many wordings like you can say Oracle software, database software, Oracle home, database home, RAC home, RAC software. So these all are referring to your database software, database home, RAC home and database home. This first thing, whatever the new term, different names, it's all about talks about your grid home or the ASM home, grid software or ASM software or clusterware home or clusterware software. This all referring to one and same here. And here it's all referring to one and same. Oracle software, database software, Oracle home, database home, RAC software. These all referring to one and same. Again, it's all based upon the people what they're familiar and what they're going to use. They will call with the different names. So even myself, I'll be sometimes using a database home, sometimes I'll be using a RAC home. So this all referring to one and same. Right? We'll deep dive on that RAC database and RAC home, and we'll understand our day-to-day activities as a RAC administrator, how we're going to handle the particular database, how we're going to handle the particular user connections. All those things we'll understand in this chapter number 13. And chapter number 14 is about backups and recovery. Very important concept, because backup and recovery is one of the strong technology or one of the backbone for your business continuity. Any business to run, they should have the strong backup and recovery concept, because we don't know at what time your database may crash, because your database is running under servers, your database is running under storage, and your database is running under network. So at any time in an infrastructure, network may crash, server may crash, a disk may crash, and that lead to your database corruption or database crash. The moment database crash happens, as a DBA, how quickly I can able to restore my database with help of my strong backup strategies. So we'll try to understand backups and recoveries, various types of RAC database backups, like RMAN level 0 backup, level 1 backup, RMAN backup set, image copies, and arclog backup, control file backup, and your data file backup, your SP file backup, and your auto backup. And with help of all those full backup and incremental backup concept, and how can I able to restore my database? How can I able to restore my control file? There may be chances of only control file corruption, only single data file corruption, or only your system data file, sysag data file, undo data file, only single data file might have corrupted. How can I quickly restore that data file and bring my database back online and my business can continue to run? So we'll understand all about backups and recoveries, and also we'll talk about RMAN cloning. Like most of the times developers will send a request, can you duplicate or can you create a development database with the latest production database backup? Can you create a test database with the help of latest production database? Can you create a development database as of last week, last Sunday's a full backup? So all those scenarios we'll talk about in backup and recovery, that too pertaining, that too especially for RAC database, nothing about standalone here. And then we'll talk about the listeners and the clusterware. Right. Again, I'll take a pause here. I'll be keep on explaining about the topics and concepts here. But meantime, if anyone has any questions or queries, feel free to unmute yourself and then stop me, and then you can ask your questions. Or you can use the chat box here. You can post your questions. I'll take that by looking at this chat box here. All right. So with that, chapter number 15, we'll be covering about listeners. Again, in simple words, when you start working as a RAC admin, you will see many of the listeners, like grid listener, ASM listener, your scan listener, local listener, database listener, and your ASM net listener. So why these many listeners? What is my end user connection flow gonna go? Do we really need all this? So those all will be covered in this particular listeners here. And then chapter number 16 is about multi-tenant architecture, very important concept. multi-tenant architecture, that is your CDB and then PDB. CDB and PDB, very important concept. We're going to cover CDB and PDB here. So the RAC database with respect to CDB, container database, pluggable databases, and how we are going to manage all these CDBs and PDBs, and what are your multi-tenant architecture, and then how to take the backup and restore and recoveries of CDBs and PDBs, how you can create a PDBs, how the user is going to connect to PDB, how the user is going to connect to CDB, where we're going to create a user either on CDB or on PDB, and how can I configure my listeners and TNS for CDBs and PDBs. So it's all respect to RAC database. We're trying to cover a multi-tenant architecture here. Again, this is going to be one of the fundamentals, and this is going to be Oracle strong suggestions, CDBs and PDBs, because starting with the 21C onwards, it's all about CDBs and PDBs. There's nothing called normal database. It's all about CDBs and PDBs, starting with the 21C onwards. Till 12C, this CDB and PDB came while installation of CDBs and PDBs. While installation of your 12C database or 18C database or 19C database, it's going to ask you two options, whether you want to create a normal database or multi-tenant database. Normal database or multi-tenant database. Normal database or multi-tenant database. Based upon which option you're going to choose, your database will be either normal database or multi-tenant database. But starting with the 21C onwards, it's always multi-tenant database. There's no option to choose normal database or multi-tenant database. Starting with this 21C, it's all about one single type of database. That's a multi-tenant database. That's a CDBs and PDBs. So understanding multi-tenant architecture is very important. All right. So then we'll try to understand ACFS. That is the ASM cluster file system. One of the important and brilliant concept. So you can have your disk group and create a ACFS file system, and you can mount it as a normal local file system, and you can use it for your day-to-day operations. So we'll deep dive under ACFS configuration, ACFS administration, and managing your ACFS, increasing the size, decreasing the size, and if you don't need that, how to delete that ACFS file system. So we'll talk everything on ACFS here. And RAC database versus RAC one node database, your online relocation, how you can relocate your RAC one node database. We'll cover here on chapter number 18. Chapter number 19 is about patchings. So your grid infrastructure patching, your RAC Oracle home patching, your RAC database patching, your OPatch versus OPatch auto, and your data patch. Do we need any downtime for patching, rolling patching, non-rolling patching, hybrid patching, and many concepts we're going to try to cover in the chapter number 19 is about patching, grid infrastructure, and RAC. And followed by chapter number 20 is about upgradation, the RAC database upgradation. What are the different types, various methods of my RAC database upgradation? And what are the pre-checks? What are the post-checks? How can I minimize my RAC upgrade or downtime? And again, can I do my RAC database upgrade in rolling fashion? Can I do my RAC database upgrade from online mode? So we'll go deep dive and understand all this upgrade process and fundamentals, and we'll have various method to upgrade my RAC database. We'll try to explore all of them. Can I do in online mode or offline mode, command line, GUI mode? All we're going to explore here in the RAC database upgrade. Right, and then RAC, and the chapter number 21 is a node addition and node removal. Again, it's not a regular activity, but you may get a chance to work on this. Right now you have a 2-node RAC. I want to add one more node, make it as a 3-node RAC. I want to add one more node, make it as a 4-node RAC. How to deal with that? How can I do that node addition and node removal? So we're gonna explore more on this chapter number 21, node addition and node removal. Again, conversion, single instance, how you can convert it to RAC. DBCA, Enterprise Manager, rconfig, or use rman backup and restore and do a post clone steps and make it as a RAC. So conversion of your standalone to RAC or single instance database to RAC database. We're going to talk in deep dive on that conversion. And then chapter number 23, 24, 25 is again extra topics. where in 23 we're going to talk about resume cover letter. I'll go over my own resume cover letter. I'm going to give you some important advice or tips on how your resume should be strong enough so that any openings you apply, your resume should be get shortlisted. I'll go over my own resume and then I'll give you some advices how your resume looks like how your resume should be looks like, and what are the strong points you should add it in your resume. And then at the same times we will have a I have written like the bunch of interview questions and answers, like the more than thousands of questions and answers are written. So you're gonna go ahead and then prepare for that particular interview questions and answers. And on a regular classes also, each and every day we'll be discussing the interview questions. And at the end, you can go over and glance that entire interview questions. So that single document, once you prepare it, so you can able to crack any of the interview. And followed by I'll be conducting the mock interview. It's like one-to-one interview where you will be connecting with me and then I'll be driving the interview process. I'll be, asking the questions and you'll be answering it. It's kind of a real interview questions. We will be feeling that you're attending a real interview. But, before you go for any client interview, so just go for this mock, register for the mock interview, and then I'll take how much, I'll give you feedback, how much you prepared and what are your strong areas and in which all areas you need to improvement. So I'm going to take all those and then provide you feedback at the end of that mock interview. Right. So that's a brief intro about the course curriculum or the course content. Right now, I'll take a pause for a minute. And if anyone has any questions regarding this course curriculum or content, and you can, feel free to ask here.
Yeah, Malik,
Malik,
good morning.
I'm not able to see data guard previously.
Data guard will not be covered in the RAC concept. Again, if anyone interested in few of those kind of concepts, like as I said, uh, data guard. Just now you mentioned data guard, and some people may interested in OEM, and some people may be interested in Golden Gate. Some people may be interested in a TDE or wallet. So those are advanced concept, so will be covered based upon who all are interested in which all topics. But in this particular course curriculum, so that is not included because data guard we included in our database course. Once you understand the database course and learned about data guard, so it's the same concept is applicable for RAC. Again, yeah, these are the extra topics will be covered based upon the need or based upon how many of them are interested. Along with this, any other extra topics, whatever like interested, and we're going to cover it as an extra topic, not on this particular course.
Yeah, Malik,
At the end of the
what will be
last, you will cover data guard also, right? Because it's a mandatory topic.
We covered
Lots
last,
of environment having data guard settled with RAC.
we covered data guard in the last class. So probably the whoever completed the last or last to last track batch. So what we covered, last batch we covered in the last track class we covered data guard, and last to last rack batch we covered about TDE. So again, this is last to last rack batch we covered this as extra topic, and last batch we covered data guard, that to rack data guard. Again, this is all extra topics, so will be covered based upon how many students are interested. We'll be covering one or two batch together, and we're going to explore these topics.
I have one question. Hello. It's a theory only or it's a hands-on training?
This entire whatever the course is all about the lab exercise. It's all about live practical demonstration.
No, you are going to demonstrate, we understand that. So can we, how to do it from our end?
We're going to talk about that in the next topic. All right. Let's
so
quickly.
normally
Yeah,
how
go ahead.
long the rack duration of this specific
We're going to
course?
talk. Yeah, we'll discuss that one next topic. So once okay. For now, like please stand by. The moment I cover next two topics, then you will be getting all the answers. The next one will be what I'm going to cover is about a course duration and the timings and the fee structure. So the course duration, let's say this is a weekend batch. So again, I'll go to my, there's a upcoming RAC announcement. I'll go to that if I open that one. Right. So then this is what we're talking about. The 6th July, what we're talking, it's a weekend batch, Saturday, Sunday. Around 5 to 6 weekend, we're able to complete the course. So you can go ahead and then open this demo registration link. So I'm gonna take this content. I'm gonna keep it over here. So I'm gonna ping these two links in our chat here. You can feel free to take a note of that. So what it says, so if you take a look here, today and tomorrow are 2 demo sessions, and actual class is going to start by so that this is today and tomorrow. I think there's a typo here. It's not. Oh, it's an EST time zone. I'm talking about IST time zone. It's the 6th July and 7th July. And for the EST, it will be 5th July and 6th July. And this is a demo link what we are using it for today and tomorrow. And this is a RAC course curriculum what I just covered. And our actual course is going to start on the next weekend, next Saturday, 13th July 2024. Next Saturday, we're going to start this course. And the course timing is going to be 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., 4 hours on Saturday and 4 hours on Sunday. So actually demo classes, what we're conducting today and tomorrow is about only 2 hours, 8 to 10 and 8 to 10 today and tomorrow. But our actual classes is going to start from 13th July 2024. That will be a 4 hours on Saturday and 4 hours on Sunday. So this is a weekend batch, Saturday, Sunday only. And the timing is going to be 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's a 4 hours on Saturday and 4 hours on Sunday. And in Eastern time zone, it will be 10:30 p.m. EST to 2:30 a.m. EST, 4 hours on Saturday and Sunday. And again, as I said, in 5 weekends, we should be able to complete this course. If at all anyone interested on those extra topics and extra concept, so we'll go for one more weekend and then we'll cover all those extra topics. And this particular course is a paid training and the course fee is 15K INR, 15,000 Indian rupees, or like 185 US dollar. And we'll be conducting all these classes on a live Zoom sessions. It's all like live recordings. The live recordings will be available for the previous batch. Like if you're attending for this particular course, you'll be getting access on the previous batch recordings. You can go ahead and then watch those recordings in advance so that when you're attending the live classes, you can ask more questions. So you have both options. You'll be getting a old batch recordings. Also, you'll be getting this current ongoing batch everyday recordings. And at the same time, you'll be attending the live classes for the interaction. And again, this will be covered based upon 19C database version. Right, so that's about the course curriculum and the course timing, course duration, and the fee structure. So I'll take a pause here if anyone has any questions here before I go to the minimum requirement, because I see a couple of questions here in the chart. What are the minimum RAC requirement? What are the minimum duration and all? So again, for all those questions, it's a 5 weekends. It's a only weekend batch, Saturday, Sunday, and it's a 4 hours on each weekend. Saturday 4 hours, Sunday 4 hours. And the minimum requirement. So if you know the basics of Linux, basics of Windows, basics of SQLs, and basics of database knowledge, fair enough, well and good. If you don't know the basics of knowledge, you have not learned the database course, again, don't enroll for this particular course. You will not be able to understand anything if you don't know your database knowledge. If you're not a DBA, you don't know the database concept, you'll not be able to understand this RAC. Don't enroll for that. You don't know the basics of SQL, like how to write a query, simple query, select instance name from $1 instance. You don't know the SQL queries. Again, don't enroll for this RAC course. Again, if you don't know the Linux, how to log in, how to switch the user, what is CD, what is mkdir. So if you don't know those basics Linux command, again, don't enroll for this RAC course. again, you'll be having a lot of difficulties in understanding and you'll be lagging. Right, again, Windows, again, no, not necessarily you should know the Windows, but you should be able to know Windows, how to log in, how to go to directory, how to create a document. So those basic stuff you should be able to know. Then this course is going to be useful because we're going to use individual personal laptop or desktop, and we're going to set up the lab. Great. And then the most important thing is hardware. Somebody asked how we're going to set up a lab, how we're going to do hands-on lab. So here is the answer. So you should have a laptop or the desktop with a minimal 20 GB RAM and 150 GB SSD hard disk, because we are going to set up, we are going to do this installation, this chapter number 1 to 7. So this all rack setup with all the networking, with all the scan, VIPs, public IP, private IP. We are going to do individually set up a rack lab on the individual laptop or the individual desktop. So you should have a minimum of 20 GB RAM in your laptop or desktop, and you should have 150 GB SSD hard disk. So we're going to use your own individual laptop and set up a lab using Oracle VirtualBox. Right, so I'll take a pause here if anyone has any questions so far on the course curriculum, course duration, course timing, fee structure, and the minimum requirement.
Yes, Malik.
Performance tuning.
Hello, Malik sir. I have a question. That
Yeah.
will we perform any kind classes for RAC performance tuning?
No, performance
there any-
tuning, no. Performance tuning will not, that's a separate course. We are planning to conduct a new course that is a performance tuning, but here there's no performance tuning.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Right. Any questions so far? There is a few questions on the Slack here. I can take it out. The minimum requirement for the RAC course, the RAM. So again, here is the answer. You should have minimum 20 GB RAM and 150 GB SSD hard disk. That's the minimum requirement needed. And what are the total duration for the course? The question from Siva. Again, the total duration is going to be 5 to 6 weekends. We should be able to complete. That will be of weekend batch, Saturday, Sunday, 4 hours on Saturday and 4 hours on Sunday. And there's one more question here. The world recordings. Okay, world recordings and the current recordings. Yeah, is it a lifetime access? Yes. So these recordings are lifetime access and no restriction. Even you can download locally all these recordings, all these PPTs workbook. Right. Let's say before that, next topic. Google Drive access. So in this Google Drive access, you're going to get link one. You're going to get one Google Drive link. All course materials. All course material like PPTs, workbook, lab exercise, softwares, your automation scripts, and all those things. You're going to get everything over here. You're going to get link 2. Link 2 is about all softwares and your tools and your interview questions and automation scripts. Right, so you're going to get Google Drive link 1, which has all course materials like PPT, lab exercise, and your workbook, and it is so many things. And link 2 will get all the software tools, entry questions, scripts, and all things. And link 3, a previous batch recording. So you'll get all the previous batch recording so that you can watch those recordings well in advance. This is again live classes. You can watch those recordings live, whatever the live classes, whatever conducted last batch, you can watch them so that those are like interactive sessions. Many people will be asking many questions on those. So you will have idea in advance so that when you attend the live classes, so you can ask the more question on top of that. Or you want to learn entire RAC concept in next 1 week, you can go and then watch all the previous batch recordings, kind of a fast manner. And link for current batch recordings. So every day, every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, we'll be recording the sessions and we'll be uploading into the Google Drive. So whatever this Google Drive links will be lifetime accessible and no issue on that. Even you can download all this into your local. You can go to Google Drive and download them into your local laptop and keep it on with your laptop for lifetime. No restriction or no questions on that. Right. So then the next one will be WhatsApp. Right. We'll be having a dedicated WhatsApp group. Give me a second here. All right. So WhatsApp group. So WhatsApp group is all the registered student will be part of that WhatsApp group. I think we got couple of students last week. They already registered and they made a payment, and I have added them to WhatsApp group and have granted the access on the Google Drive. So they are all watching the previous batch recordings and they're part of the WhatsApp group. So that WhatsApp group is a dedicated WhatsApp group only for the registered student, and all communication will happen in that WhatsApp group. Any questions, any queries, and if anyone working in an organization, he got some activity and he stuck and he needs some help, you can just post it in the WhatsApp group. And any person who has attended the interview and there are some challenging questions, and post those questions over there. And then this WhatsApp group is for dedicatedly for registered student, and you're doing your setup and you're reading some concept and you're stuck and you need some help. You can feel free to post your questions or queries in the WhatsApp group, so anyone can respond to you, or I can connect with you one-to-one and I can unblock you if you have any setup issue or if you have any questions or queries and you need to clear understanding of a certain concept. So I can connect with you one-to-one, or we can connect at some extra classes and then we can clarify all those questions or doubts. And this WhatsApp group is like a lifetime group. So even after completion of this course, you can ask any questions or queries, and I'll be conducting some extra classes. So I'll be posting those timings and dates in this WhatsApp group so that we all connect on regular basis and we'll explore more topics on that. Right. So again, this WhatsApp group will be active and then we'll be having a lifetime support only if the students are active and then actively participating and asking questions and making that group active. That will be there. If nobody is interested and it's become inactive, then the group will be automatically get deleted. So yeah, make sure that you keep all the active interactions, ask questions and queries. Then you will get a lifetime support dedicatedly for the registered students here. Yeah, again, there's a few questions here. WhatsApp group access. Again, it's a lifetime group provided it's active and then people are actively participating and asking the questions and keeping that group active, then the group will be live. If nobody is interested and nobody is asking any question, then automatically the group will become decommissioned. Can you provide a document to install RAC on AWS cloud? Right, there's a RAC is not supported on the cloud. You don't access RAC on cloud or RAC on AWS, RAC on Azure. There's no concept of RAC on cloud. Great.
So what about Oracle Cloud? It will support, no?
Yep.
So are you
Support.
going to cover that one?
No, Oracle
Any
Cloud
plan?
is not covered here. It's not Oracle Cloud. That's a separate course. We're not covering
Okay.
anything on the cloud. It's on premises.
Okay. One question: are you planning to cover 12C to 19C upgrade? Is there any chance?
That's just explained, right? That's your one of concept here. Chapter number 20th, your RAC database upgrade. there are like 5 to 6 upgrade method, your DBUA, your silent method, manual method, your auto upgrade, your shell script, Perl script, your command line upgrade. There are 5 to 6 upgrade method. We'll be covering 12C to 19C upgrade or 11G to 19C upgrade with different approaches. Right. So that's about WhatsApp group and all the communications. And now with that, with all this course curriculum, course duration, course timing, fee structure, the next question will be, how can I enroll for this course? As I said, already we got a few students. They all might have got access on the Google Drive. They are part of the WhatsApp group. So now with this, if you are interested and continue to enroll for this particular course, you can feel free to ping me on my WhatsApp +91 9880 616 848, or you can give me a call on my number. We have WhatsApp number or we have cell number. You can feel free to call me or ping me on our WhatsApp, or send me an email mallikarjun.ramdurg@gmail.com. I can further guide you to the payment process. We have different multiple approaches for the payment process. So I can guide you through one-to-one if you are like who are interested. So I'm gonna share this WhatsApp number and Gmail ID in the chat here. You can feel free to make a note of them and connect with me one-to-one, so I can help you on that further payment processing and the enrollment process for this particular course. All right. So with that, let's explore a few of the concept like the RAC architecture and the RAC networking and file system and RAC versus standalone and grid ASM or RAC. So few of the concept, we're gonna explore more on that. So very first thing, I'll talk about standalone versus RAC. Standalone versus RAC, the pros and cons, like advantages or disadvantages. So let's say this simple slide will explain you what are the advantages and disadvantages. So I have a standalone server. Let's say this is my host. Similarly, I have my host 1, host 2, and my host 3. I have 3 hosts. Let's say my 100 users comes through different approaches, mobile, web URL, desktop. All these 100 users will connect to my single host and they'll connect to my database via this instance. Your host should be able to handle that 100 users. And if you get 1000 users, all these 1000 users will come to your host, and then your host should be able to handle that 100 users or the 1000 users. And your host is going to be overloaded, right? Your host is like kind of overloaded, and we do not have a concept of balancing that load. The load is overloaded here. Now let's say the same in the RAC. If there is 1000 users, like out of the 1000 users, around 330 users will connect to host 1, and the 330 users will connect to host 2, and the 330 users will connect to host 3. That is load balancing. The load is equally balanced across all the RAC nodes. We can say RAC nodes or RAC host or the RAC servers. Many people will call it the different names, but ideally it's a RAC nodes. So your load will be distributed. That is your load balancing. That is one of the main advantages of your RAC. The very first advantage is your load balancing. So load balancing is the one, that's the one of the feature you can get it in the rack. Whereas standalone, it's only one server or one host. There is no concept of load balancing. Your server will be overloaded. And the second advantage is high availability. HA, high availability. What is the high availability? Let's say the user wants to connect to my database, and if your host is down, your database is down, nobody can access your database, if your host is down, there's no high availability here. Whereas in case of RAC, if a user want to connect, if the host is down, the user can connect to other host. If the other host is down, user can connect to other available host. There will be a multiple host where user can easily connect to any one of that. So this is a high availability. So we have multiple servers where user can pick up any one of the host. That's again internally Oracle is going to decide which host to connect based upon the load. There's a high availability. One node is not available or one server is not available. We have other server to connect. And a third important concept is failover. What is that failover? Let's say the user is connected over here, or the user is connected over here, or the user is connected over here. If this server is down, all these users will be disconnected. Very, very bad. Let's say my client is connected over here. If the server is down, automatically his connection, the user client one who is connected here, automatically his connection will fail over here. From the server 1, it will automatically connection will go to server 2, or connection may fail over to server 3. That's a failover. Again, it has a central concept. We're going to understand more in deep dive about failover, high availability in our regular classes. But that's the advantages in case of RAC. So meaning we get a 3 strong fundamental features with a RAC: load balancing, high availability, and the failover. And these 3 main features was not available in our standalone. So because of this, enterprise customer will always go with a RAC database for their business need or the business use case because of load balancing, high availability, and the failover, the strong fundamental feature of your RAC. Right. And then that's about the advantages of RAC over a standalone. Now let's explore more on that. The standalone versus RAC, how that the file system is distributed. So again, if you already worked as a DBA, I'm gonna tell few words here. You should be familiar or you should be aware of that. One is SP file, other one is password file, and the next one is control file, and the next one is your data files. And in these data files, you can have system, sysocs, undo, temp, and then users. And then other than that, any application specific files. Redo logs, and then archive logs. Those are the familiar files. Again, apart from that, there are so many other files like your audit files, trace file, TRM file, and so many other things. But now for your core fundamental operations, your database to run, these files are needed. So in case of standalone, let's say I have a server. My instance is running over here. Again, you should be aware what is instance. Instance is a combination of memory and your background process. And this instance and background, this memory and background process will form your instance. Database instance will be running on a server, and that instance will be tagged to your database. They will be communicating. So this particular entire database server, standalone database server, will have all this SP file, all this password file, all these control files, all the data files, and all the read log files, and all the archive log files. All will be available on the single server here. And this particular instance is able to access all those files. Whereas in case of RAC, what happens? Let's explore more that. In case of RAC, it's not one single database server or one database instance. You'll be having your server 1 and you'll be having your server 2. And the server 1 will be having instance 1 and the server will be having instance 2. And this instance will be having again same process, memory and then background process. Memory and background process. Whereas your data files or the database will be under shared storage here. Not on node 1 or not on node 2 or not on server 1 or not on server 2. All the data files will be under shared storage here. The storage will be attached to both the nodes or both the servers. So in case of here, SP file is placed under your server, the shared storage, which is shared between server 1 and server 2 or the instance 1 and instance 2. Your SP file will be shared. In case of RAC, we'll be having shared SP file, meaning one SP file, your instance 1 will be using, instance 2 also will be using the same SP file. Again, password file, again it will be on the shared storage. Shared password file. Control file again on the shared disk group. It will be shared control file. Control file is shared between your instance 1 and instance 2. In the data file, you have system, sysocs, and temp users shared. Your system, sysocs, temp users, all these data files are shared. Whereas your undo data files, non-shared. So you have only one system, one sysocs, one undo or one temp or one users. System, sysocs, temp and users, all other files are shared between instance 1 and instance 2. Both are able to read, write single data files. But whereas undo, it's non-shared. Your instance 1 has its own undo data file. Your instance 2 has its own undo data file, which is not shared. Your instance 1 cannot write it on undo 2. Your instance 2 cannot write it on undo 1. Both instance has its own independent undo data file, and all the respective transactions will write into that associated data file. Those are not shared, non-shareable. Redo log again, non-shareable. So your read log, your instance 1 has its own set of read logs. Your instance 2 has its own set of read log. Whatever the transactions, whatever the end user, let's say my user 1 is connected to instance 1, whatever transaction he's going to do, he's going to write it to its own redo logs. He's going to write it to its own undo. Whatever the end user connected on instance 1, he's going to use its own redo logs and its own undo on that instance 1. And whatever the end user, let's say end user 2, client 2 connected to instance 2, he's going to use its own redo log 1 and he's going to use his own undo redo log 2 and undo 2. Whatever the transaction is going to happen on the second node, they will be using their own redo logs and own undo. So those are non-shared. Remember that. So your undo is non-shared, your redo is shared. Apart from these two, everything is shared. Your RK logs again shared. So your SP file, password file, control files, all the data files are shared along with RK logs. But whereas your undo data files and redo log files are non-shared. Those are instance specific. Instance 1 has its own redo and undo. Instance 2 has its own redo and undo. But again, you might be aware what is the SP file, why we need, what's the password file, why we need, what's the control file, why we need, what are these data files, what's the use case, what is this redo log files, what is this RK log files. Because if you are a DBA, these are the core fundamental database architecture files and you should be aware of that. If you don't know what is SP file, what is password file, again, this RAC course is not meant for you because first you need to learn database skills, learn database fundamental architecture. Once you understand all of them, then you should be enrolled for the RAC course. All right. So that's for the simple understanding of the file system in case of RAC versus standalone. In case of standalone, all of these files are like one-to-one mapping. One instance mapped with one data phase. It's all like one set of data files. Your instance can able to access all those data files. In case of RAC, almost all data files, whatever I lifted out here, all will be shared. Both the RAC database instance can able to read and write all those data files, one set of data files, one set of SP file, control file, password file, one set of data files, one set of archive files. Everything is shared between both the instances, all the RAC instances, except your undo and redo. So apart from that, whatever you see, your instance 1, all the diagnostic logs, instance 1, they have their own set of logs. Your instance 2, all the diagnostic logs, instance 2 has its own. Diagnostic logs in the sense, instance 1 alert log, instance 2 alert log, instance 1 TRM trace file, instance 2 TRM trace file, instance 1 audit file, instance 2 audit files, instance 2 trace files, instance 1 trace file. Your whatever the instance file on instance 1, whatever the instance file on instance 2, all these are like instance specific diagnostic files. All those will be available on the respective servers, not on the shared storage. All those will be available on the respective servers. All those diagnostic logs, like your alert log, trace file, TRM file, incidence files, audit files, so many other files. Those are like diagnostic files. All will be available on that particular instance specific. Node 1, instance 1 has own set of diagnostic logs. Node 2, instance 2 has its own set of their diagnostic logs. That's out of the shared or non-shared concept. Those are diagnostic files. All right. So that's a simple understanding of the file system, standalone versus RAC.
Malik, will not they have a common alert log?
No, it's an instance specific. Your alert log, TRM file, trace files, and your audit logs, your dump logs, your incidence logs, all those are instance specific.
Would the information inside the alert log be same on all the instances or it would be different?
Whatever the instance 1 specific will be logged on that instance 1. My instance 1 crashed, that information will be there in that instance 1 alert log. That nothing related to instance 2.
Hello.
Yep.
How this TNS file and all are shared also?
Right. So again, that's a different concept. We have a separate topic on that TNS. We're going to talk more on that, let's say here. Before you go with the TNS, you should understand listener, how listener works in RAC. There are ASM listener, scan listener, remote listener, local listener, your net listener, how the connection is going to work. So connection via connection, then you're going to derive your TNS. So we are going to give in simple definition, we have instance 1, instance 2, and then my database is over here. The client, let's say my database name is prod. Here it will be prod instance 1, prod instance 2. So this client is going to use a TNS with a name called prod. Not either instance 1 or instance 2, prod 1 or prod 2. He's going to use a TNS with the name of a prod as a service name. And then the connection will go to your scan. First, there's a scan. So again, we'll discuss in detail in our regular classes. The TNS connection, whatever the prod connection the client is using, that connection will go to scan. Scan has the internal mechanism to route that client connection to either node 1 or node 2. That is called your load balancing. That is one of your RAC feature we just covered, load balancing. The scan has that internal mechanism. Let's say this instance 1, 10 user connected. Instance 2, 9 user connected. So when any next 10th user comes or any new client comes, my scan will route that connection to instance 2 based upon the load, based upon the number of user connection, based upon how much load, how many transactions are running on that node 1 and node 2. Your scan is smart enough to understand and know each and every RAC cluster node, what is the load, how many users are connected, what transaction they are doing it. So based upon the load, your scan will route that connection to whatever the least loaded server. So that client will be connected to that node. And then he can continue to do the transaction. Right, yeah, to understand the TNS concept, first you need to understand the listeners. Once you understand the listeners, then we'll understand the scan load balancing. And then you will see, you will be more confident on that, how that connection will be routed. All right.
Hi, Malik. I have a doubt.
Yeah.
Here you were mentioning about instance 1 and instance 2. So here, in the instance 1 and instance 2, in both the places, the database will be in read-write mode only.
Your database, again, that's a basic architecture. Let's say, go back to basic fundamental, Oracle fundamental. What Oracle fundamental? You have a database. This is your database. Database is nothing but your all data files. All data files or end user data is called a database. How end user, the client one, want to access data? He cannot have any access or any rights to read, write any data into these data files, because these are binary files which are available under storage. How this client is going to access this database, these data files? The client can access this database via something called instance. This is a database, is a physical structure, and this is your instance, is a logical structure. This instance is nothing but memory and background process. And the client has to connect to instance first. Via instance, he can access to your database. He can read and write any database, any data files, any table inside that. Right? That is your database. Database is the physical storage files where you're going to keep all your data files, system, sysaugs, undo, user, temp. That's your database. So in order to access those database, you have to first connect to instance. Via instance, you can communicate to your database. In case of RAC, we'll be having instance 1 on node 1, instance 2 on node 2, and your database will be under shared storage. Your database will be opened and it will be read and write. It's just a matter of your client is connecting to instance 1 and they can access to the database. Your client is connected to instance 2 and they're accessing to database. Two fundamental concepts, instance and the database. Database is your core fundamental data files located on the storage. In order to access that database, those data files, there should be instance. That instance will be running under multiple servers here. That instance is nothing but memory plus background process. The client will connect to instance 1 and then they can access to your database. Your database will be always open read write, and it's just a matter of client has to connect to instance. If the instance 1 is down, your client cannot able to access. The client automatically connection will fail over to instance 2. Why instance 2? They can access to your database. Right? In order to access to database, your both instance has to be up and running, your database has to be up and running. In case of standalone, it's a one database, one instance. Both has to be up and running so that client can access to database via that instance. In case of RAC, your database has to be up and running, and client can use any one of the instance in that RAC node. It may be 2 node RAC, 4 node RAC, 10 node RAC. Client can connect to any one of the instance, and then they can access to database. All right. That's for the RAC versus standalone, the instance and database and the connections. Again, the connection is not that simple. We have a lot of listeners and TNS. And the file system structure, RAC versus standalone, how the file system, whether which are files are shared, which are files are non-shared. So let's say now I don't know whether I have a server. I wanted to connect and show that. Let's take it here. Second. Right. Meantime, anyone has any questions, feel free to go over that. I can try to connect to
Yes,
server.
one question, sir.
Yeah.
Are we going to install on this laptop or in the VM, inside a VM?
In the VM, I just
Okay.
covered that one right here.
Sorry, I might have missed it.
Yeah. So we need a minimum requirement. So we should have a minimum of 20 GB RAM and 150 GB hard disk.
Yeah,
So we are
virtual box. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
We're going to install
That's
it on the VM. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's quickly talk on one more concept for today, and then we'll wrap it up. Let's go with this one. Now, we talked about the fundamental, like high level overview of standalone versus RAC and file system and the architecture part. Now, a little bit go in deep on the networking side, and tomorrow we can continue on the networking and the clusterware daemons and services. Now let's go further. Not this one. Let's go here. Not here. Right here. Yeah. Okay. Let's go with here. So this is like a networking. So again, it's a too early. There's a question before this networking. There's a question here, which version we're practicing. As I said, it's a 19C. I just explained over here. You might have missed. We are going to cover 19C database version in this course. Right. So networking is going to be one of the challenging topic. So if you are going with a 2-node rack setup, like this is the minimum requirement. And again, this is going to be one of the interview questions also. In order to set up a 2-node rack, how many IPs are needed? So very first thing, I have a node 1. I have a node 2. Your node 1 should have a physical IP 192.168.1.101, and your node 2 should have a physical IP 192.168.1.102. Two physical IPs for the node 1 and node 2. And at the same time, you should need 2 virtual IP on that particular node. I have this server 1 and server 2, node 1 and node 2. I need 1 IP for a physical, 1 IP for VIP. The physical IP and the VIP. The virtual IP does not have any interface, and the physical IP should be having its own interface. And then on the same node, you'll be having a private IP for the private inter-node communication. So with that, what we come to the conclusion, in a rack setup, a single server or the single host need a minimum 3 IPs. A public IP, VIP, and the private IP. 3 IPs are must. If you are setting up of a 2-node rack, 3 IP on node 1, 3 IP on node 2. And then coming to scan, you should have a scan VIP, and you can have a scan VIP with 1 IP, with a 2 IP, with a 3 IP, 4 IP, 5 IP. You can assign n number of IPs for the scan. The default or the best practice is 3 IP. Oracle recommends to go with the minimum 3 IPs, and maximum we can go with whatever number of IPs you want. Again, we'll cover in our regular classes why 3 IPs, why 4 IPs, why can't I can go with only 1 IP. There are some advantages going with the 3 IP. We'll cover that one in our regular classes. Let's assume best practice as a 3 IP and the default is 3 IP. So with this, in order to do a 2-node rack setup, node 1 3 IP, node 2 3 IP, scan 3 IP. Totally, I need a 9 IPs to do a 2-node rack setup. If I want to expand 2 node to 3 node, I want to add one more node. Again, how many IPs I need? I need another 3 set of IPs. If I want to do a 3-node rack setup, 3 plus 3 plus 3 node, individual nodes need 3 into 3, 9 IPs, and scan. Scan, you can go with a 1 IP, 2 IP, 3 IP, and n number of IPs. But default, I'm taking as a 3. That's a default configuration, 3 IP. If I want to expand one more node, this is my node 3, and this is my node 4. If I want to expand one more node, again 3 more IPs. 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, 12 IPs for your node and 3 IPs for your scan. So I should be able to configure my rack with these many IPs. And again, what's the use of physical IP, VIP, private IP, and scan IP? We'll cover in our regular classes. So this is a use case. So one important thing here, earlier days, there's no concept of VIP. There's no concept of scan IP. People used to directly connect to node and then access the database. Later, Oracle came up with a VIP. Instead of people connecting to directly the node, let people can connect via VIP to the node. Via VIP, they are used to connect now. And now, again, Oracle done with enhancement with the scan. So now the connection will go to scan. From the scan, the connection will go to VIP and it will connect to the server. Again, scan via scan, the connection will go to VIP of that second node and the connection will go to the database server or database instance. So earlier, the 3 changes had happened. Earlier, it was directly a node connection. Like people used to directly connect to node IP and connect to that node. Right here. So from here, node IP. This was your olden days. Option 1, directly connect to that physical IP, connect to that database instance. Oracle has came up with some improvement. Instead of directly connecting to node using the physical IP, let's go to via VIP, connect to that instance. And why they came up with that? That is to support the failure and all. We'll discuss in our regular classes. That's the second generation. They came up on a VIP concept and Oracle used to connect. The client used to connect via VIP to that particular database instance. And later Oracle came up with the scan in 11G and the client will now connect to scan. Via scan, the connection will go to VIP and then connect to the database instance. Again, scan, via scan, VIP, via VIP, that particular instance to support your load balancing and all. So that's a in deeper understanding we're going to talk in our regular classes. But for now, we need each node 3 setup IPs, public IPs, private IPs, and node VIPs. Public IPs, your node VIPs, and the private IPs. So 3 IPs per node, and the scan. The scan is either 1, 2, 3 based upon whatever the use case. The default is 3. That's the need of your public IPs. And again, inside that, a public network and private network, and the private IP for internode communication, we're going to discuss in more on that particular once we start our regular classes. Because once I start explaining about this, the green box, public network, private network, and private communication, that's going to go into more advanced discussion, and it's too early. I'll just pause it for now for the networking here. But yeah, in simple definition, in a RAC setup, you need 3 types of IPs: a physical IPs, the VIPs, and the private IPs. 3 types of IPs, and you need 3 IPs per node and the 3 IPs for your scan. That's your requirement. That's your minimum requirement. All right. So now let's go further. That's about the networking. Again, in networking, simple understanding: a public IP, VIP, private IP, and scan IP. Scan IP is default 3, public IP is default 1, VIP is default 1. Each node specific I'm talking about 1. So this is for each node. Each node, and this is shared. Right? Each node, if you have 2 node, 2 public IP, 2 node, 2 VIP, 2 node, 2 private IP, and this is scan is shared. Now let's explore more on that installation. So installation I'm not going to cover with respect to RAC. I'm going with a general installation. So there is a question here: what is the duration of this course? I already explained that one bit earlier, if you missed it. So here is the answer to your questions. So this will be of the 5 weekends. The course will be on a weekend, only Saturday, Sunday. So 4 hours on Saturday and 4 hours on Sunday. And we're starting next weekend. Next Saturday we're starting. 13th July is the actual class we're starting. 4 hours on weekends. Saturday 4 hours, Sunday 4 hours, and it will be a 5 weekends. And which is of 19C version. The classes will be taken over a Zoom session, online live classes. And this is a course, is a paid training, 15,000 Indian rupees or $185.
Can we do on 12 GB?
12 GB, no. You need a minimum of 8 GB for each VM. 8 GB one node, 8 GB second node. There itself you need a 16 GB. And on top of that, you need some RAM for your database or your server or your laptop operation. All right. So there are 2 slides I mentioned over here, the installation one. So what are the changes happened in 11G and 12C and 19C? So again, if you might have done the installation practice, you will understand more. So in 11G, we used to first download, like let's say download your grid software, download into use your own patches, some location, some staging location. We used to download that, and after that, patches, let's say use your own patches here, grid dot zip. We used to unzip that one. The moment you unzip that one, we're going to get the directory called grid. Right? First, you need to download the software into some staging location. From the staging location, unzip that software. The moment you unzip, you're going to get one grid directory. go into that directory. Inside that directory, you can run this run installer. The moment you run this run installer, it used to ask where you want to install this grid software. Then you need to pass this grid home. And then it used to copy that grid software into this path, whatever path you're going to provide. And then it's going to set up this grid software. It become your grid home or the ASM home or the clusterware home. From 11G to 12C or from 11G to 19C, they made a little bit change. What they did a change? Whatever the grid software, you no need to download it on the staging directory. Directly you can download it on the location where you want to install it. Let's say use your own app 12C grid, use your own app 19C grid. Directly download it there and unzip there. After unzipping there, run the grid setup. The moment you run the grid setup, whatever the software you unzipped, that become your grid software or the grid home. I unzipped my grid software here. I run that grid setup, and wherever I unzip, that become my grid home. That was the change. One is they changed this run installer method to grid setup in 12C, and that one continued to 19C, 21C. The grid installation is started with the grid setup.sh. And in 11G, first you need to download into staging, unzip there. From there, you need to run the run installer. It used to ask what is your destination location where you want to install it. But in 12C and 19C, no. You directly unzip it on the location where you want to install it and run the grid setup. That become your grid home. Right, that's the changes of the installation process what Oracle has made that from 11G to 12C and 19C. That is for your grid. Same thing applicable for your Oracle home as well. What happened to Oracle home? Like again, download your Oracle software, and you're gonna download that Oracle software to use your own patches like database.zip. And you need to unzip that database.zip. It is to create a directory called database. And from that database, you're going to run this run installer. It used to ask on which location you want to install this database software. You used to pass this user on app 11G DB home on. It used to copy that database software over there and configure your database home. It is in 11G. Same thing for your 12C. You need to download your 12C database software, and that will be again database.zip. Database.zip, and you used to unzip that one, that become a database. The directory will be created database directory, and then from there you have to run this run installer. The moment you run the run installer, it used to ask where is your Oracle home. You used to give that Oracle home, and it used to copy that software over there, and it used to form your Oracle home there. And in 19C, what happened? They changed that concept. So download that database software, download it directly where you want to install your database software. Use your own app, Oracle 19C DB home one. Download directly into that particular DB home and unzip over there. Run the run installer. The moment you run the run installer, it used to convert that the location where you downloaded as the Oracle home. So that was the changes happened between your grid installation versus database installation from 11G to 12C, 12C to 19C. Right, so we'll be purely covering this 19C database installation and 19C grid installation. Right, and then at the same time we'll be sharing the steps for 11G and 12C. You can take a glance on that, how the screenshot and all this, how that looked like. All right. So there's one more question, single rack node, how it is different from rack. Yeah, that is a rack one node. We will basically, let's talk it in tomorrow's class or in our regular classes. So we have a chapter for that as well. So here, if you see, we have a chapter number rack one node. Oracle RAC one node. So that Oracle RAC one node we're going to talk about in our regular classes. All right, I'll take a pause here now. If anyone has any questions, we have a few more minutes left. We'll take those questions. If no more questions, we can wrap it up for today. We'll continue further discussion tomorrow. And tomorrow we'll go deep dive on little bit internal of RAC and cluster startup sequence and cluster daemons and cluster services versus cluster resource versus local resource. Few more concept we'll explore more in our tomorrow's demo session.
Malik, where are these PPTs available? On which folder is it present?
I can share in WhatsApp group. It's on about link one, whatever the link one. I'm going to share that one in our group.
Okay, yeah. You already shared the previous.
Yeah, it will be there. Like I can share in our group. You can take a look on that.
Thank you.
All right. So if no question, let's wrap it up today. We'll continue tomorrow. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.